Welcome, class, to a very famous video, one that I'm making just for you, but on a presentation I've given about 8 times on a topic that I think all of you have asked for, more details specifically on sales and fundraising. We're going to cover both topics today in this brief presentation. The slides are available. You can get them from my blog at titusblog.blogspot.com. Search for sales training, or you can get them from class. They'll be placed in the Dropbox inside the Blackboard. So the first part of what we're going to talk about today is sales. And I think it's important to understand what sales is and what sales is not. Sales is that part of business where you have to convince someone that what you have is valuable to them. And we talked about value in prior classes, and I hope you understand that value is important, because otherwise there can be no exchange. In startups and small companies, sales happens all over the board. In fact, sales happens even when you're hiring someone, because you're trying to sell to that person that your company is going to be worth working at. And that is itself a sales job. So that's also sales. When you're trying to find investors and convincing them they should put their money with you for value, that's also sales, which is why I cover sales and fundraising as the same thing. When you are buying something from someone, believe it or not, that is also sales. So if you follow along in the slides, I'm on slide 3, which has a list of things that are sales. So question for you, why would it be that buying something from somebody is a sale? Isn't that a purchase? Okay, you tell me. What do you think? Well, the answer is it's obviously a purchase, but it's a sale as well, because many companies will only sell to certain customers. In fact, that's usually the case with something called a supplier. So when you're a company buying supplies from another company, they won't sell to just anyone. You have to convince them that your company is worth selling to. So let me give you a specific example. A company that I worked for, Bigfoot Networks, we made a network card for gamers, the Killer Nick, and we've talked about it before. I had to convince Freescale Semiconductor, which is a massive company. We're talking 20,000 employees, multi-billion dollars in revenue. I had to convince that huge company that my company, Bigfoot Networks, of 30 people, $10 million company, was worth selling to in a one-to-one basis. They would love to they would let us buy from them, but we needed more than that. We needed help. We needed technical support. So we had to convince them that we were worth selling to. And every year I went back and sold their key executives and got cheaper and cheaper and better pricing, because they saw us as new and chic and interesting. And oh, by the way, I'm in France, so you might hear some odd French terms thrown in the middle of the conversation. But so that's the issue. Even with suppliers, you're also in sales. Obviously, partnerships are sales. Even though no money is changing hands usually in a partnership, you're still selling them that you're worthy of being a partner. And then the typical sales that you all know are typically aligned sales with, and that is the idea of sales directly to a customer. Now, that could be a customer on the street. Believe it or not, some of the best salespeople work in fairs, and they stand in their stalls, and as people walk by, it's called hawking. They bring people into their stalls to come play the toss game. 1 in 3 winners, win the big prize. And what they're conveying, when people walk by, is value. It's value because they're saying, hey, you have a chance to win something, and that's what they're trying to convey. And they're very good at it. So let's move on into thinking about slime. And I think if you're following along, we're on slide 4. Slime is a really interesting thing and an interesting problem, because most people in sales think of themselves as not slimy. And other people who get into sales and don't like it often quit because they feel slimy. So isn't that an interesting kind of conflict, where some people think, well, I'm in sales and I'm not slimy. I'm not slimy at all. Other people think those salespeople are slimy. Like, think about it. When you go to buy a car, you go into the car and to the car shop and you say, oh, that's a nice car, and that's a nice car, and that's a nice car. And then suddenly the guy comes over, the sales guy, and he says, oh, which car would you like? And you say, that one. And then he says, well, that's a good car, but there's a better one over here. Doesn't that seem a little slimy to you? And it is. And this is the key idea here, what I'm going for. Are you going to buy a car from someone who's slimy? I don't recommend it. Because they're not doing you a service. And that's not how you do sales. The right way to do sales is to go and get the right car for you. And a good salesperson would try to learn about you and your family and your needs. And they would try to figure out, hey, what kind of things do you need? Do you need this car for? I know you like that car, and I will sell it to you right now. If you want to buy this car, that's fine. But I'd like to help you find the right car for you, and make sure that this car is gonna do you well. Because I'd like you to buy not just this car, but the rest of the cars of your whole life with me. And because of that, I want to make sure I'm getting you the right car. This car is a good car, but there are other cars that might be better. Let's talk about it. That's sales. The salesman is adding value to the conversation. And that will cause a repeat customer. And there's no slime at all. The best salespeople exist to help you. That's what they want to do. That's what they should want to do. And that's what they do. They try to help. And that's the point. And what are they doing? They're trying to make sure that you're getting value and that the transaction is good. My number one selling tip and technique is very, very straightforward. All you have to do is try to qualify the customer. In other words, all you have to do is make them convince you that they're worthy of buying. Interesting. How does that work? Sort of flip sales on its head. Instead of making sales about, hey, this is what you want, this is what you want, you turn it the other way around and you say, hey, are you good enough? Do you have the right needs? Does what I have to sell you good enough for me to sell it to you? In other words, are you good enough to buy from me? You flip it to that, and it becomes about the customer. And you're going to win. You're going to get the deal. That's true in fundraising also, but we're going to cover that later. Key point here is selling should not be slimy. If it's slimy, okay, you can read the slides, but if it's slimy, you either don't truly believe in the value that you're providing for that customer, maybe you haven't qualified that customer. See, selling a Mercedes-Benz to a poor person, probably not the best idea. Okay? First of all, they probably won't be able to afford it. But even if they had just enough to buy the Mercedes-Benz, let's say it's not poor, let's say this middle-class person that wants a Mercedes-Benz and they've been saving their whole life. You can do that sale, but I'm not sure it's right. I'm not sure it's right. Anyway, you have to think about that one. But I can tell you this tip and technique truly is key. If you can make sure that the person is getting value for their purchase, you should not feel slimy at the end of the day. Okay, the next thing to understand about sales is there's certain models that exist and have existed forever. And hey, maybe, who knows, maybe you'll invent a new model. But these are the models that exist today. If you look at slide 5, you'll see. The key, there are sort of two big categories of sales. There's something called direct sales and indirect sales. We're going to focus mostly on direct sales, but let me touch on indirect sales briefly, and then if there's time I may come back to it. So indirect sales is when you do not have any salespeople. So that means you're closing deals via the internet or mail or phone or some way that's not a direct conversation. And direct sales, on the other hand, is when you have human beings sort of interacting in a one-on-one basis to make a sale between one human being and another human being. Okay? As opposed to some kind of system, automated system. That's called indirect sales if it's automated. Direct sales is when there's a human being interacting. Okay, and within direct sales, there are two subcategories. There's something called inside sales, and then there's something called outside sales. And the difference is inside sales is typically when you already have leads, you already have customers, either existing customers or prior customers or people who know you, and you're just selling them more stuff or reselling them stuff they've already done in the past. And that's inside sales, and typically it's done via phone or and the people will come to you. Then the outside sales is when you're out there, you're going out to the people. In other words, you're either going door to door, or it's outside because you're going door to door, or you're sort of looking around, or you're finding the key leads. You've heard the term leads, and if you haven't seen Glenn Ross, the movie, that's a great movie to introduce you to some of the funny things about sales, but it's not actually a good sales movie, so you know. But there is a lot of talk about leads in that movie. Leads. What is a lead? Well, a lead is when you have someone's phone number and ostensibly they've given you permission to call them, at least. Especially in modern times, you cannot call or email someone without their permission. That's because of the CAN-SPAM Act, and so you need to make sure you have permission. But ostensibly, a lead is someone who's given permission. Maybe they've entered a contest where they have a little checkbox that said, you may email me or call me, or maybe they've done something else, and ultimately the lead is a good lead. A better lead is someone who has previously shown interest in what you're selling. So there are different levels of leads. Anyway, the point is, outside salespeople work with either very thin leads, like just a phone number or an email, or no lead at all, and they just go door to door. They go to trade shows and they just drum up new business. Okay, typically the two types of direct sales are different types of skills. So the inside salesperson is great at relationships. They go and play golf with these people, right? Dell has the most inside sales people in Austin. They have hundreds and thousands of people who schmooze constantly with their key accounts so that they can sell those accounts more and more hardware over time. Outside sales, Dell has outside sales people too, but those people don't schmooze people they know. They're constantly calling and drumming up new business. They're doing emails. It's a little bit more marketing-y than it is salesy. To me, outside sales, if done wrong, and it often is quite slimy. But I'd like to tell you a little story about my experience doing outside sales as a young man. I was trying to gather money for college. I'm sure you all can sympathize with that. And I found that there was a sale. My mother introduced me to a program where you could sell aerial photographs door to door, which is outside sales. The way it worked was I had the pictures already. They were already made, and I bought them from the pilot. The pilot sold me the pictures of a neighborhood, every house in the neighborhood. I put them in my car. I drive around door to door, and I get them in the nice little frame, and I walk up the door and knock on the door, and I have the picture. And here's the cool, interesting thing. The cool, interesting thing is that I didn't have any price. The price was whatever I wanted. I had already bought the pictures. If I threw them away, I'd make no money. But so what do I do? So the interesting thing, so I'm going door to door, I'm knocking on the doors, and I'm saying, hey, would you like to buy this picture? And usually they go, wow, what is that? And I said, it's a picture of your home from the air. And it was a nice big picture. And they'd say, well, how much? And I'd quickly look around at the interior of the house or the exterior, and based on what I see, I would say, well, $100, or I'd say $30, and then they say, oh wow, that's kind of high, or that's kind of low. I said, well, that includes the frame. If they say it's high, and if they say it's low, I say, well, that doesn't include the frame. So anyway, what am I doing? I'm trying to capture value to the point right in the middle where I've captured value where I make money, okay, and they are happy. And that's what I'm trying to do in that deal. But it was hard work, because oftentimes people would be very, they get it, they understand, and they have to believe that you're going to walk away, and that's hard, because people would negotiate to very low numbers because they want to try to capture as much value as they can, and obviously I want to capture as much value as I can. What does it sound like? That's win lose and lose win. That's win lose. If they win and I lose, if they capture more value, it's lose-win. They lose and I win if I capture more value. I try to play the middle. What I want is a perfect balance. Everybody wins. Win, 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 win. So it's hard. But that's my little story about door-to-door sales. So let's talk about a little bit more about a direct sales force. And we've kind of covered the two angles, the inside and the outside sales. The key is to get leads, which we've covered already, and the quality of the leads is important. And you need to qualify the leads. So let's go through an example of a typical startup. Let's say you're a medical company, and you're trying to sell a new kind of something simple, a new kind of Band-Aid, and you have like enough approval, you have FDA approval or whatever, you've got that undercover. So who are you going to sell to? First, you got to get some leads. Who are you going to sell to? It's the most important step, the number one step, and it should have been a step that you did way in the past. Identifying the target market and who are you going to sell to. That's key. You should already know that. And if you don't, you better stop what you're doing, rewind, reboot. You need to know who are you selling to. In this case, I think you're selling primarily to supermarkets. You've already got, well, you may have to sell to a supplier first, someone who can manufacture your new Band-Aid at a high enough rate, at a low enough cost, at a high enough production rate. But let's pretend like you've got all that worked out. So who are you selling to? I think you're selling to big retail stores. And having done that before myself, let me tell you, it's very hard. Getting leads is the hardest part. What did I do? I went on LinkedIn and I searched and I found every person's name I could find who worked two connections away from me, who worked at Newegg, Tiger Direct, Fry's, and Walmart and Best Buy, and I emailed them all and I called them all. Every single phone or email I could get. And my question was, hi, I've got a great new product, the Killer Network Card, and I'd like to sell it in your store, but I need to know who the buyer is. Can you connect me with the buyer for networking equipment? And they would say, sorry, no, bye. Or they'd say, I'm not sure who that is, but I'll get back to you. And they never got back to me. But then after the 10th one, they said, oh, yeah, I know who it is. It's Paul Randolph. And I'd say, can I have his number? They say, oh, I'm not sure I should give it to you. I'm like, okay, no problem. Next call. Hey, I'm trying to reach Paul Randolph, to the next person. And they'd say, okay. Oh, Paul Randolph? Yeah, okay, sure. Here it is. It's 5111111, whatever it is. And now suddenly I've got the buyer at Best Buy or Fry's or wherever, and I've got his name, his number, and I'm calling him. He's the right guy. By the way, that's how it works in retail. You have to find the buyer for your department at the headquarter level. And that's what I did. And I did it that way. For this Band-Aid company, they got to do the same thing. They got to figure out who owns Rite Aid and who's the buyer at Rite Aid who buys Band-Aid products, and they got to figure that out. It's not easy. They got to research. They got to network. Ideally, they already know that if you hire the right person, they may already know someone at Rite Aid, or at CVS, but maybe they don't. And if they don't, then you got to hire the right person who knows how to get to that person, or you got to do it yourself, because the CEO has to do the selling if no one else can. And believe me, I've been in that position. I know it's true. So you got to call, right? You got to go to LinkedIn and search until you find the right buyer, and call and email and bug until you find the right buyer. And then you got to meet with the buyer. And I did that at CES, this big show. But you got to find a time and place to meet. I mean, you need to fly somewhere. Maybe there's a convention that you can arrange to meet this person at. That's the way to get things done. And usually sales at that level don't happen unless they're face to face. I didn't get into Fry's overnight. I had to go to CES and meet them and convince them in person with my product. what you got to do. Best Buy, we had to fly, okay, to Best Buy headquarters and convince them there. We had to go. We had to do it. But we got the meeting via the phone, of course. So that's what leads are, and qualifying leads. In this case, I qualified who the buyer was and that they can do the buy and that they're the right person for that department. That's a quality lead if you can get that, and that's what it takes. Then and only then can you start the selling. And how do you start the selling? Well, once you have a quality lead, I use a technique called SPIN, and it's a funny technique. It says spin, like you're spinning somebody, but I like that because it reminds me, don't spin anybody, because that's not how you sell. It's just an acronym. It stands for situation, problem, implication, need, payoff. And I've got a link to this book where I learned spin selling. The name of the book is Spin Selling. And I have many other blog articles on it if you want to read more about it. In fact, I've given a training at the University of Texas on specifically spin selling, and that's also available on my blog at titusblog.blogspot.com. Meanwhile, back on this presentation, let me cover spin selling briefly for you. And the idea here is you want to try to uncover if they have a need, if the customer or the prospect has a need that matches what you offer. It's win-win or no deal. And if you go into every deal with that in mind, win-win or no deal, you immediately flip it on their head. Hey, do you have the right need for this thing that I sell? Are you good enough? Is your problem hard enough or correct enough to match what I have to sell? And if it's not, I'm not going to sell it to you. I don't want to sell it to you. I might refer you somewhere else. Because in the future, you might have a need for what I have, and then we can talk. But if I don't know if you have my need yet, I need to find that out. And you're going to respect me for it, because I took the time to listen to you and find out if the problem that you have is the problem that I can solve. And that's true sales. It's not slimy. And the acronym SPIN takes you through the kinds of questions that you ask to build up to the ta-da moment when you can say, hey, you have a need. It's got a specific implication. It's a problem. It's got a specific implication. I know how much, an implication, by the way, is I know how much dollar-wise it would help you to have this problem solved. And the need payoff is if you had a solution to that, the payoff would be X. Therefore, the value is X. And I offer something that's at a value of Y. It's above X. Sorry, the price of what I offer is less than the value of what you get. So you're going to get value. Let me explain that. Let's say that you're buying my new software that makes your shipping better. Okay, so your shipping logistics software. Well, the price of my shipping logistics software is $100,000 a year. My logistics software better save you $200,000 a year, or it's no deal. You understand? Why? Because there has to be value. If I charged you, let's say you got $100,000 of value and I charged you $100,000, why would you do that deal? There's no benefit to it. You just, instead of giving your $100,000 to the shipping company, you gave it to me. There's no value there. You have to create value. And if you don't create value, you can't sell. Very simple. There's no point in even making the phone call. Okay? And you may not sell in one phone call. Okay, as I mentioned in my attempts to sell the Killer Nick at all these retail stores, it took 2 years before I even got a meeting with Best Buy. Now, it only took about a year to get a meeting with Fry's. Only about 6 months to get a meeting with Newegg. But still, it takes time. And then once you have a meeting, it's usually not the meeting. It's usually a first meeting. And the goal of that first meeting is to level them up. And I like to do that by qualifying them. Can I qualify that you have a problem I can solve? Hey, Best Buy, would you like to make more money per sale in your networking department? How much are you selling your network cards for today? Oh, $50? Guess what? Mine's $300. Would you like to sell $50 cards or $300 cards? You choose. Well, of course they'd like to sell $300 cards. More revenue, more profit. That's a win-win, right? Yes, correct. And you got the deal. That's how it's done. But it didn't happen in one meeting. It happened over multiple meetings. First, I qualify them. Then I show them. Then I arrange for a demo. Then I had to meet with their executive team. Then we had to do some finance. It took time, but each meeting was a level up. Okay, what's the next step to make sure that we're going to be on time to launch the product in your store? That's the magic. Those are magic beans, my friends. Magic beans. Eat them. Okay, if you look at the presentation, you're going to see that there's additional slides on doing sales on a website. And there's also slides on marketing here, which you can look at it or not at your choice. We're not going to cover them today. But I'd like to move on from sales and talk about a different kind of sales, which is investors. And that's on slide 8, if you're following along. This will be the last part of today's lecture. So, selling to investors is the same thing as selling to other people. What's the first thing you have to do in sales? Get the leads. Same thing in investing. You've got to get the leads. And I have for a long time preached something that my colleague and I used, a technique we used for lead generation for investors. We called it the laser beam shotgun approach. What the heck is a laser beam shotgun? It's like you put a laser beam on top of a shotgun. All right? So your laser beam points and aims really good, and then you fire the shotgun. What does the shotgun do? Scatter. Okay, why? So that's the analogy. What am I talking about? To get leads for investors, you have to figure out who generally, the type of funds who generally invest in companies of your type. Let me give you an example. If you have a software company that makes enterprise software, well, that's easy. There's a class of venture capitalists and angels and angel networks who have typically in the past invested in enterprise software companies. So you just need to meet with them. In other words, you wouldn't meet with someone who's investing in biotech because you're not biotech. You're enterprise software. You understand? Laser beam shotgun. Now that I know these investors are the ones who have invested in enterprise software, I take my shotgun and I shoot all of them. All of them. I try to get a meeting with each and every single one, starting with the smallest, leading up to the biggest. Yeah, really. That's what I do. Why? Because the smallest guy always asks, "Oh, have you met with this next bigger guy?" And I say, "No. Could you make an introduction?" And then when I get an introduction from VC to VC, that's golden. Okay, so that's what you do: laser beam shotgun, and that's how you get the leads. It's not how you close the deal; it's how you get the leads. And there are literally dozens of places. You search the web, who is investing in X, and you will get results. Okay. You will get results. You just have to do the work, do the research. Now that you've got the leads, well, you don't have the full leads now. You just have the firms. You got to get to a person's name who you can call. Okay, and that's not easy. Some websites, some investor websites, some venture capitalists, angel groups, and others, they actually have a place where you could submit. You can submit your business plan here. It doesn't hurt anything. Go ahead and do it. But I've never, ever gotten a call back from that, ever. And I make award-winning business plans. Okay? I won Moot Corp with my business plan. My business plans are not crap. They're good. But I've never gotten a call back from that. Because, maybe it gets looked at by some intern of an intern at those firms because they get thousands of them. They're usually crap. And it's just, you just don't get there that way. I'm sorry. You can try it. Maybe you will. Maybe you'll get lucky. Okay? Who knows? So how do you do it? Well, what you got to do is you've got to get an introduction. That's the number one. If I could pick the number one way, is I would get a referral. Someone to introduce me, either introduce me via email. Hey, this is Harlan. I know him because of X, and you might like his business plan. Would you like to see it? He's copied here. And if I get a sure, then I email it back to whoever replied the sure. Okay. Introduction is number one. In fact, introduction from VC to VC is the best. That's why I start with the smallest and work my way up. Because they all know each other. They all know each other. And they talk, by the way. And usually investment deals happen with multiple parties. It doesn't happen just one firm. It's usually a couple of firms who come together and decide they're going to invest together. Okay, with one lead. Get a lead. So that's very important. Get the leads. Get the true leads by getting an introduction if you can. And that might mean you just have to email people. Seriously. Email with the smallest one and just, hey, And here's a little trick. It's not really a trick. It's a true technique to get a venture capitalist or angel or someone who does investments interested in your business, and that is to ask them for help. Hey, I've got this great business idea. I'm working on a business plan. Would you mind spending a few minutes with me next week to over coffee to critique it before I present it to some other venture capital firm? And they would say sure. Then during that meeting, you genuinely listen to what they're saying because they probably have good advice about your business plan. Then you ask, hey, do you have anyone who might be interested in something like this? And they'll say yes or no. But that's how you get it done right there. Okay. Then he or she gives you a referral to the other guys who he thinks are a good fit. Plus you got the free advice about your business plan. Win-win, baby. And why does that person want to do it? They want to do it because, generally speaking, investors want to see small companies succeed. They do. They're not the enemy. They want to see you succeed. They want to be part of the success, and that's what you got to convince them. So, back to business plans or investing. So what do you make? So if you look at slide 8, you'll see this is mainly about what you have to put together in a business plan. And I think you have other classes that cover that, but this is my point. The first thing you got to do is sell a vision, because if you can't get the vision across in 1 or 2 slides, you're lost. They're not going to follow. They're not going to care about your financials unless you can get the vision. And you better be solving a problem, because remember, if you're going to be selling this, and you will, no matter what kind of business it is, there's always sales involved. There has to be mutual value. There has to be value that you create for the customer, of which you capture a portion of it. Understand? So that's the key. And your business plan and business model better have that in it. It better show that value, the value delta, how much you capture and how much the customer gets. And it better be that they get more and you capture a portion of it. You see? And that's what I mean by show the business model. It can be as simple as, this is how much value it is, this is what I'm charging, and here's the 5 customers that I've already got. And by the way, in today's market climate, and really it should be this way all the time, if you don't already have customers, you shouldn't be raising money. Sorry. You need customers first, or you're not going to get any money. It's just too risky now. Startups are too risky. You need to have customers first. And you need to show that your 5 customers is going to lead to 5,000 or 5 million or whatever your model is. You need to show scale. And that's what it's talking about in the slide. You need to show scale. And of course, you need to show some intelligence around business, some kind of simple business model. And as mentioned before, I have a very simple business model on my blog that you can go and read and download and plug in for yourself and put in your own numbers. Literally, you just need revenue, cost of goods, expenses, net income. That's it. You got that for a 3 or 4 year plan and some kind of assumptions about how revenue is growing. You're good to go. And that's what I have built in the presentation. Search my blog for business plan or business model, and you'll find it. Lastly, you need to be passionate about your business, and you need to wear positivity goggles, which is the picture in the slide. When you look at it, it's funny. You need to wear positivity goggles. You have rose-colored glasses on, okay? You cannot see the negatives, right? Yes, there are risks, but risks are not negatives. Risks are opportunities. If there were no risks, the business would be done already. And that's how you need to go into the meeting. And you don't talk about your negatives. You only talk about your positives. They're going to bring up the negatives, and you're going to say, yes, those are definitely possible risks. You've identified key risks, and we're doing everything we can to mitigate those risks. But we believe, because we've drank the Kool-Aid and we're wearing the goggles, we believe. And you got to be honest and passionate and truly believe. And if you don't believe, you're not going to sell it anyway. Okay? Because remember, this is a sale. In fact, when you trying to get that meeting, or when you eventually have that meeting, you need to find out from that investor, hey, what kind of investing do you do? SPIN, situation, problem, implication, need, payoff. You need to ask those questions as though you're doing a sale. Before you launch into your pitch, take the 10 minutes to ask a few questions about that venture capitalist. It's going to make your presentation better. Find out about that angel and what kind of companies he's invested in the past. Okay, have a conversation about, hey, where are you in your funding cycle? See, these financiers typically have a fixed amount of money that they're trying to put to work. Are you early in your fund? Are you late in your fund? Right? How much money do you have to invest? And what kind of companies do you like to invest in? What kind of return do you typically like to see in your investments? How risk averse are you? Do you like biotech? Right? You need to get to these levels to understand more about them, and then once you've let them talk. By the way, you have to shut up. I know I don't shut up very well, especially not in a video, but you need to shut up and listen to them when you ask a question, and listen and write it down. And then once you've listened, you can even say it back to them. That's a great way. It's called active listening. And finally, now that you've listened and wrote it down and said it back to them, then and only then can you make your pitch, and you better modify your pitch in real time to what they told you, or you're not going to sell it. And that's, if you can do that, you're going to raise money, and you're going to raise a ton of money, and I believe you can do it. All right? That's all the time we have right now. We're going to have Q&A on this topic on Thursday. We're going to cover it again, and you're going to hopefully be in a good position to sell your company and raise money, and I wish you the best of luck.